Were you doing that on purpose? No. All right. Tell me if you have any sound now. Oh, I can see the little sound bar going up and down. So I'm hoping yes. Anybody? All right. It's 10:30. I just want to say thank you for showing up to EPP Live. I'm Karen Tripp. I'm an English paper piecer. And I really am just here to share with you my knowledge, answer any questions, tell you funny stories, slightly entertain you. I don't really know. You tell me what you want. Um, an interesting tidbit is a little bit about the history of English paper piecing. The first recorded or recognized EPP quilt was 1770 in England, and I'm sure they were making those before that, but that's the first one on record. And it eventually came to America. And I think, what is the, 1807, we've got documentation of an EPP quilt. And that's really cool. And the interesting thing is that the women were early settlers and didn't have a lot of paper products. It was hard to get, it was expensive. So for their papers, they would use letters that they had written to each other. And so on the back, and they would cut up their letters. And so they saved their papers. And so on the back of the EPP papers, you see scripts and writing. And I think that's really cool. So, and another tip is, or tidbit, is that they left the papers in a lot of the, so you don't have to do that anymore. Anyways, I just thought we'd start off with a little history just to know where that comes from. So Will, I actually can't see the comments because it's on the side. Okay, and you gotta bear with me, okay, because this is so new. The only reason I could do this is because my son Will is helping me. Otherwise, this is like way beyond my skill level. Um, oh, good. So you can hear me. I'm not talking in vain. All right. Is it possible to get a little more volume? Hi, Karen. Love that you're giving us a little history. Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to know where this came from. Um, let's see. Another question I had was, and again, some of you are more advanced, some of you are beginners, and I think we're just all here to share. What is the difference between paper piecing, English paper piecing, foundation piecing, hand piecing? When I first started, I really had no idea. Um, so, and I struggled with trying to figure that out because there's really not a, well, there's not a clear cut way to figure it out. But you do. You can get on the internet and research, and that's great. So foundation piecing and paper piecing are done on the machine. So it's that confusing part of paper piecing. Is it done with papers by hand? No. It's English paper piecing is the key word, okay? English. That means you're doing it by hand. So you're using papers, you're wrapping the shapes. So there's that. And then there's hand piecing. And that is actually done by hand as well, without the papers, with a running stitch. So really it's the difference between machine sewing and hand sewing. And that, my friends, I hope is cleared it up for any of the new folks that are trying to figure that out. All right. Let's see. More volume. Hi, Karen. Love that you're giving history. Okay, let's see. All right. Someone asked, tell us something no one knows about you? I don't know. I have a freakishly small head. Does that count? I don't know. That's why I go with the big hair to kind of compensate. I have to wear children's glasses, but I don't want you to stare at me now and try to analyze that. All right, let's see. Janice. Hi, Janice. She asked, let's talk about the best fabrics for English paper piecing. Of course, to me, it's all about the fussy cutting. You know, if you're going to bother to hand sew something, it should be fussy cutting. Take the time. You're already taking the time. And it is the one thing that's kind of hard to do with machine sewing. So take advantage of the ability to fussy cut. And the fabrics that I like here's one of my, can you see that? Yeah, I think you can. One of my all-time favorites is this Tulip Pink. And where do I have it somewhere, and I'll show maybe a rosette. But it's really nice because you have a smaller motif. Now that is part of the problem with English paper piecing. I feel it's like the only shortcoming, but I see it changing in the future, and I'll talk about that later. You're cutting up really small pieces, and so something with a really big pattern just gets totally lost. So it depends on what shape you're using. So for instance, this is I think a 1 1/4 pentagon. So that's pretty tiny. So if I had something that was a big giant motif, for instance, this, if I was going to use this or this, it gets a little lost. So I personally like a little smaller detail. And this is a great example too. So here I fussy cut. So I did take the little larger image and then I repeated it. And then this was a little smaller. So I think you can find elements in almost any pattern. You just have to repeat it. But depends on the size of the shape that you're using. For instance, when you're fussy cutting with this little guy, it's really hard to find something really small that fits in there that you can repeat. So it gets a little tricky. I tend to fussy cut the larger shapes because it gives me a little more freedom. And with the smaller shapes, I just cut them and let the other bigger shapes do the talking. And I try to add a little contrast. So that is, here's another one that I just love cutting this up. Again, the little shape there is just the right size to repeat. It fits nicely. I have cut this poor little guy up so many times. I've got my EPP Swiss cheese. So anyways, that's a favorite. What's another good one? Here is really just a simple fabric, but I felt like this was really fun to fussy cut because I lined up some of the lines. You know, you can find your little forest animals or do an I Spy. That's a great one. Here's a fun one. Again, I'm just grabbed some things from my stash. This is a really great one. Again, you're able to repeat. So I tend to stay with smaller scaled prints. And here's another one that is a small print, but there isn't quite as, you can fussy cut this, but there's not quite as much detail to fussy cut, so it gets a little bit lost. So it's kind of a balance. You have to find something that has a repeatable pattern. Oh, that's my little marker. I gotta remember to put dark blue stars on this one. This was a fun one. I found this little teeny element in this bigger motif. So like I said, I feel like you can make almost any fabric work, but I like to find the crown jewels that are just loaded with lots of small detail. But you don't always have to fussy cut to make it work. For instance, you know, my bigger shape on this guy, I didn't fussy cut it. I ended up fussy cutting a few parts, but And then I always like do fussy cutting these guys. But you know, I think a mix, although there are some people that fussy cut every shape, and I applaud you. You have more patience than me. And even fussy cutting the little stars is, I think I've done that on a few, but I just get impatient with that. So, um, yeah, does anyone else have something they want to talk about with fabric and what are the best fabrics for English paper piecing? I'd love to hear that. If you have an opinion, let me know. Let's see. Chris wrote in. Oh, wait. Sorry. I have to mark that one. Okay, so I have finished my La Paz, and there it is. But I'm doing a second one for my daughter, and I have to find it because I have these little notes because I've kind of got sidetracked, and I'm doing a lot of other EPP. So, oh, here it is. So I do that, you know, I put them all together, all the rosettes for the La Paz, and then so I'm adding, see, I'm being good, dark blue stars on this guy. Okay, so there's that. All right, Chris, how do you do the quilting after you are done? Now, I'm thinking this is really more of a border question, but it could be more of a quilting question. So, oh wait, let me look to see what somebody else is. Okay, more volume. Oh no, I think we got the volume. Oh, on the quilt behind you, do you have, sorry, I'm gonna get sidetracked here because I thought it was talking of, let me see this question. Do you have hints for stitching the star points on the background fabric? Did you remove the paper pieces before stitching? Great. Okay, so I will talk about that. All right, let me finish where I'm headed. So this was from Chris, and this might be in relation to this other question. How do you quilt after you are done? I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily, well, the basic answer for that is, you know, I would think if you could do hand quilting would be awesome. I never have the time to do that. I am always rushing to get a quilt done for a deadline or something, or I want to start the next one. And my goal for this year, and already kind of halfway done, but I want to start hand quilting. I don't do that. I don't take the time. I think I probably can do it. It looks kind of hard to me. And I don't have really strong hands, and it looks like, you know, anyways. So my goal is to hand quilt a quilt. But I think it really just depends on what you want to bring out, what patterns you want to bring out in the finished product. But I'm wondering if this is more of a question about the border. So I'm going to tie these two questions together. Without showing you, I think I could do this. This is the Mischief pattern that I designed, and this was sort of an all-over quilting pattern. It was pretty random. So I didn't want it to take away from the color, and there just seemed to be so much pattern already. Now, my La Paz, if you were to look at it, oh my gosh. I mean, each little shape is stitched. So I went well, I didn't do this, Sue Fox did the quilting, but I asked her to really go overboard almost. And there's a reason why, because I didn't stitch it very tightly, and I felt like eventually it was going to fall apart. So that's kind of a secret between you and me. I understitched this. This was one of my first EPP quilts, and I was just learning. So a lot of my stitches were really far apart. And at the end, and when I started, I said, you know what? I'm not going to redo this. There are some pieces, rosettes that I started and got together, and I'm not going to redo it because this is my learning project. This is my you know, my start, this, I'm going to be able to look at this and see where I came from. So I just said, you know, I'm going to own the stitching, and I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to show it or do anything. It's my personal quilt that's going to be in my family. Well, as it turned out, there was that great show in Houston with all the La Paz. And when it came time to, wow, people are going to actually be looking at this and scrutinizing my sewing. Oh my God. I took it to the quilter, and she kind of nicely said to me, she's like, you know, it's just me, and I'm just putting this out here, but you may want to do a few rosettes in a few areas. And she pointed it out. She's, if you want to leave it, that's fine. I'm happy to quilt. And you know, I ended up redoing like 3 of the centers. So I kind of backtracked on my, you know, what values of what I thought I was going to do. But, you know, actually, I'm glad I did, because I am afraid that it probably would have fallen apart. And also, I told Sue to quilt the living daylights out of it, really to kind of hide my beginning sewing. But it also came out beautiful. It was really a great choice, but it was kind of by accident. So, you know, own your stitching. You know, you can be just a basic overall quilting, or you can, you know, go hog wild and accentuate every piece. I'll show you my mischief I just had quilted. And I don't do my own quilting, either machine or hand, because, like I said, I'm too impatient. I never have time, but it's on my list of things to do. So here's the quilting on this, and this is Libs Elliot. It's going to market, and I kind of wanted it to be a little edgy. So it's an overall pattern, but it doesn't really highlight any particular shape. So the question is, how do you quilt English paper piecing? That's really the long answer for that. And I think the easy answer is just like you would any quilt, I think. Did I get that right? Um, Thought about an all-over quilting design with an invisible thread. That's exactly what, thank you. See, I love the comments. That's exactly what this was for the quilting. This was the all-over design with an invisible thread. Again, because I actually wanted the pattern to be, or you know, the shapes of the EPP to be more prominent, and really the quilting to be secondary. So yes, thanks, Janice. That actually, yeah, that's a great question. Because I do, again, I feel that you take all the time, you know, so much time to sew this by hand, and then if you get overtaken by too much quilting, does it clash? Well, the answer is there's that La Paz. I think it actually worked, but so I think it just depends on the quilt. I hope that's the question that was written in, but I actually have a feeling it was this question, which is what I want to talk about next. Let me just make sure I'm on target. You talk about the hints of stitching, the star points to the background. But yeah, because that's what at least talk about color. Oh, I will. Okay, color's tricky. Okay, let's see if I can't take this down. All right. So with my La Paz, okay, I am not great at applique. And when you are stitching the star points down or any other small detail, you know, like this point on the border of your quilt, this is what I have done, and there's a couple options. I steam iron this, and then I take the paper out. It has a nice crisp edge. I don't cut off your tails because it'll just get too short and start to unravel. You can trim them, to maybe an eighth of an inch. You got to be careful because you don't want that to unravel, but you do have to end up shoving that into that little point. So you want to keep a little more meat, so to speak, at the tip and trim off the fat as you go down. You could tell I'm a chef, right? Food talk. Again, because you don't want to trim it too close to that point because it's going to unravel. And then you just have to finesse it down. Now, with my La Paz, I stitched down the star points on only 3 rosettes that were spilling over. But let me back up. Then I glue. So these have kind of a lot. These little star points have a lot of extra, and they're tiny. So it is a slippery slope of finesse. Anyways, so I take the paper out after it's been steamed, so I have a nice crisp edge, and then I took some of the Roxanne's glue, the sewing glue that washes out, and I glued it down to help me because it would just, and I pinned it. I pinned it, and then I glued the edge because I just felt like it was a little too wobbly and wonky, and it was gonna start moving on me. So then I applicated it down. So that's how you do the star points. And like with everything, I am no expert. I've just done it maybe 1 or 2 times, but YouTube is my friend. Now, here's another trick that I did with, and everybody was doing it. It's not my invention. With a La Paz quilt, if you don't want to applique all those 5 million star points to a border background, I just took the pentagon in the color like everyone did and just put a whole row of those around. And then you're just appliquing this down. And you can machine stitch, it's you aren't going to go to jail for that. You got to do what you got to do. Some people just got to finish. You got to do what works for you, and I guess that's my mantra for all of this. What's the best thread? What's the best needle? What's the best stitch? Do what works for you. Try them all. Keep a bunch of them in your tool belt. You never know. You might need it. Anyways, this pentagon is much easier to sew down than these little stars. So, I don't know if you can see. Can I bring this? Oh, I can't really bring it over. Anyways, I can't really take this heavy thing off the wall. I'll maybe do something about that, the border treatment on another live chat that we're gonna do. So I used a low volume pentagon row that was all different, and then I appliqued that to a sort of a low volume improv scrappy look because I really, and I think you can see that here. I can't tell if this chair's in the way, but I wanted the rosettes to float on the background. Does that make sense? And I didn't want you to see the pentagons or anything else, which you would have accomplished if you stitched all those down by hand. Anyways, so I think that's the other question about the border. And let me look and make sure that I am on track. Okay, is there somewhere to find all the PPP templates? I love to play around with the shapes, but I can't quite find all the shapes. Oh, that's a great question. So primarily, if you went online, and I don't know where you live, you can get different templates and shapes. Really, there's quite a few. This is a slippery slope for me because we started selling not individual shapes, and so I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but I'd say Paper Pieces really is the primary person here in the States if you want to get individual shapes and templates. I have a company now that but we sell papers and acrylics and patterns for English paper piecing quilts. But we sell whole kits. We don't sell individual pieces if you just want to play around. And I know if you're in Australia, there's a company, Tales of Cloth. They sell individual. So it just depends on where you are. And I'm not familiar with all the ones in England that sell. So I'm not up to date on all the product. But if you just Google English paper piecing templates and papers, you'll see there's a lot. There's some stuff on Etsy, I believe. But yeah, and hopefully you'll look at our site if you want to make a whole quilt with us. You can buy that too. Here's a little plug. Anyway, that's not what really this is about. So hopefully you can find that. All right. Now, here's just a quick question from Anne. Do I need the book for La Paz? You know, out of respect for the pattern designer, yes, you need the book. Does it help? Yes, it's complicated. You know, halfway through the quilt, you get it. But then there's still stuff you go back to because it's very intricate how this particular quilt comes together. It is the rosettes become familiar, but then backtracking and trying to figure out which rosette you're making, where it goes, and then there's like these little empty spaces that don't make sense. So the answer is yes, buy the book. There's a lot of other patterns in there. So yes, you should buy the book. And then what else? Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? Do I need the book? Yeah, I got that. Oh, yeah. Here's just a little tip that I started with La Paz. I didn't start it. I mean, I started using it. I number only because I made the mistake so many times. Oh, there's a pin. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was there. Okay. I number my pieces. Not all the time, but most of the time. And I'll show you why I do it and how so I obviously these are, there's a right way and a wrong way upside down. So I've sewn so many rosettes with one piece upside down. Okay, I am, this has got to stop. You think, I double look, I know, and then I don't know, somehow they end up backwards. I don't know if I am dyslexic or I swear I look. Anyways, so what I'll do is I'll lay out the ring, the pentagon ring. Someday we hope to have 2 cameras. I could actually show you stuff on the table, but we're kind of just doing this today. Anyways, so I lay out the pentagon ring, how I want these to lay out, and then I flip them over carefully, each one. Okay, so it's still in a ring, but make sure you do, so maybe you're flipping from top to bottom, but they're all going the right way, but they're upside down. So you're looking at them like this, and then I number them. But I make sure that the number is at the bottom of the card. Hi, Will. Thank you. Will's checking on me. Isn't he great? I tell you, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for him. He's so fun. I put the little number at the bottom of the card because if you put it in the middle, you don't know really what side needs to be attached. So make sure it's at the bottom. So that tells me that is going there. And then I just lay them out. Now, what's really nice is, well, I did this. Okay, so I don't even know why I did this. But, so here's a great example. I had these foxes that I fussy cut. And for some reason, I just thought it'd be, tricky and throw one, off to the side just to skew it a little bit. I don't know why. Maybe I was getting bored. So it is helpful in that particular case, to have the numbers because they're alternating, sideways, frontways. So it's good to have the numbers. because you want to get them in the right order. Now, sometimes I will just take a paper. I have a lot of them, and I just reuse them. So um, sometimes I will just do a dot on the edge. Um, if there is no particular order, but I just need to know what the bottom is, so then that doesn't matter. So I have quite a few rings that I just need to know the bottom. So then you can just do this. But I also reuse these because there are times, like I said, where, for instance, this guy, there's no order. They're all the same. I just need to know where the bottom is. So I'll reuse my papers that have all these crazy numbers on them, but that's okay because I just need to know where the bottom is. You can reuse them. You don't have to, or scratch it out and put the number, So it's a great thing to do if you have caught yourself sewing them in upside down. So, okay, let's see. We're going to talk about color. That always scares me, but we will. So Martha, I haven't forgot about you. Let's see. The all over design visible thread. That's okay. So oh, any hints about carrying colors around the quilt so that your eye travels? Color. Okay, so all right, we're doing it. We're going to talk about color. This, I think, of all the questions on our website, we've done a lot of videos over the last 2-3 years, and primarily that is the biggest question is color. It's always about color. There's a few little technical things, but always about color. And I think color is such a personal thing. It's hard for me to talk about, but I am going to talk about it. But I am a colorist. I believe all color goes together, which, I guess that's subjective, right? But it's what you feel good about. So I guess when we're talking about color, it's not about what I like. It's maybe contrast, value, and that kind of color, and how to like Constance says, how to get the eye to dance around your quilt, which I love. I have a degree in art, and so I should know something about color. Oh, it just said like connection lost, but then it said connection. Oh, cool. All right, we're back on. So I'm schooled in color. I should know about color, but it's elusive and it's tricky. So it's not always so easy. And if it was that easy and you could read about it in a book, well, then you wouldn't need anybody and you just look in the book of what color goes with what. But let's talk about color. So in my La Paz, I feel like that's something I really worked on. Let's see, contrast and value. Yes, anything about that. Yes, always. Okay, thank you. Let me just make sure. Yep, okay. So I worked really hard on my La Paz to make your eye dance around the quilt. I really take pride in this quilt for that, because I can't tell you how many times I auditioned color, and I mean, I spent more time plotting and analyzing this quilt than I actually did sewing. I mean that sincerely. So I think that this goes for all quilts. I think contrast is so important. But there are two kinds of contrast. There is color contrast, where it is dark and light. That is contrast. But there's also contrast that you can add that has to do with maybe a pattern and a solid. There's contrast there. They actually may be both pink fabrics, have pink in them, and then they use a pink. And you can get those to contrast. So there's a couple ways to get contrast in a quilt. The only way to make the shapes in any quilt show off is with contrast. If they were all the same value or contrast, it would just like one big blob. So I think this is for all quilting. you need contrast. Now, I think it's fun with the La Paz because you can contrast little shapes and then the little shapes form other shapes. So La Paz was really fun for me because you could really go to town with contrast. You know, it depends on how many shapes do you have in your quilt. Are you only working with a repeat of a larger shape, so you have less opportunity to contrast, but you still need the contrast to show the shape. So it depends on the pattern that you want to use or show off. And let me just grab my handy dandy quilt pattern. Sorry. So this is a classic example of contrast. So I designed a quilt recently called Mischief, and that is this quilt, and it's also this other quilt, and I'm going to show you because this talks about contrast. There it is. Here is the pattern guide. It looks like there are 4 different quilts on here. I hope you can see that. I'm going to try to get closer. Okay. This is the same pattern, but by highlighting one shape and making it a contrast, you end up with all these different patterns. So that's the beauty of contrast. This is exactly the same quilt done contrasting 4 different shapes. And I'll talk a little bit about that with my own quilts. Let me grab them. Okay. So let's get a bigger chunk. There we go. That's better. These are more contrasty. Okay. So, and again, I'll back into this. This is a really lengthy conversation. But, contrast. Okay. I am highlighting this shape here. I've contrasted it with this white. So this is popping out. Okay. Now I could change that. Let's see. What did I do with that? Right. Okay. Now, if you take these shapes, make them the same, and add color to that, and this is the same pattern. Okay. I don't know, this is complicated to show in a pad. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. Does this have the center? No, this one isn't the center. Okay. So these are the same shapes with this, but this, do you see this here, right here? This right here is this shape. So by contrasting this, I've created a new pattern, but by contrasting and using a white for different shapes, boy, I think I'm doing a lousy job, but I'm going to do better. You end up highlighting or pulling out a different image. And so this quilt is just the rainbow, not just, but the contrast becomes the background, little shapes. And oh, I'm stuck. Oh my God, I'm stuck. I still have to stitch the binding. I know. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. And I gotta get that done. This, oh God, now I lost my train of thought. This guy, I did a warm, cool thing. So we've got contrast, and that creates this shape, or say the pattern that you want to create, or that you want repeated. So you contrast in everyone because I'm wanting this to show up. Okay. Now I also did a warm, cool thing. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to let's get it over here. All right. So I did warm, cool, warm, cool. I alternated each one between the rows because I thought it would create movement. So your eye would go to probably more of the warm, and then the blue cool, your eye would recede. So I feel like this one you do dance around quite a bit, but I think it's the shift between warm and cool. Now you'll see I've got different colors, all different. I have lights, I have darks, and it does dance. And but even my lightest one, there's still enough contrast so that I can see this shape. So I've used I'll just hold this up. I have used light and dark contrast. I have used warm and cool contrast. So I've used both of those things to create movement in my quilt for this guy. Okay, La Paz was a little different. And again, this was probably the biggest question I got on my stuff. I additioned each rosette, and for the most part, I didn't sew the rosettes until the very end when I put them together because I changed my mind a lot. But I used 4 colors in this quilt. I used green, pink, lavender, and orange. And I used all different values. That value is light and dark. So some were light orange, some were medium orange, some were dark orange. So I used 4 colors, but I used a varying value of all those colors. And then occasional pop of white and black. I don't know why, it just worked out that way. And then what I did, I tried to repeat. So I have this pink, which is sort of a real bright, a hot pink. I made sure that I repeated that color, not near it, but adjacent to it, down here. I had it over here, I had it over here and here. So I very rarely will you see the same color next to it, but you're gonna see it repeated somewhere else in the quilt. Because your eye will go to, for instance, this black was really strong and fun, but I had to repeat that because your eye is just like driven to that dark black contrast. So I repeated it over here because I wanted your eye to bounce over here and here. And then I had this is purple, but it's very dark. So your eye does end up going there, but it probably heads here and here. And then here's a dark, I had some little dark purple stars. So I repeated the color that I was working with all through the quilt. Never was it next to each other, not very often. But I also tried to pick strategic spots that I wanted to highlight, and those will have the highest contrast because your eye is just going to beeline right for that. The highest contrast, your eye goes for that. So not everything needs to be high contrast, but parts of it can be high contrast. So your eye will dance around, and then you do need a resting point. God, I'm stuck again. I gotta really sew this quilt. I'm gonna kill myself. So I think with contrast, depends on all the colors you're working with. You can overdo it, and then it's just like screaming at you. But sometimes that's what you want. So I think I like to temper contrast with some more subdued things. It gives your eye a little rest. That's just my humble opinion. All right, let me just see if I answered the long. Oh, Janice, thank you. Oh, the Book of Color Play by, God, if I could see, I'd be dangerous. Joan Wolfman is a great, okay, so it's JoenWolfrom. That's a great color book. And Janice has got a great color sense. Her quilts are fabulous. I would check that book out. Let's see. Okay. Any hints on carrying colors around the quilt? Okay, contrast value. Anything about that? Foreground and background contrast. That's good. Okay. And yes, you did answer. Is your background on the quilt behind you pieced? Oh, good question. Okay. Sorry about the long color answer, but that's like the never ending thing, you know? Is this pieced? I see now there's that age old question. Hand piece? Paper piece? I did that on the machine and I just sliced and diced a bunch of low volume fabrics up and started sewing them together and made sheets of fabric. And then I cut those up. It was really a weird way to do it. I don't know why I did it that way. I just wanted it to blend and kind of go in the background, but be interesting. I didn't want to just use a flat color. So did I piece it? Yeah, I mean, I guess I did. I didn't foundation piece it or anything. It was very random. And it took forever and it was really hard. Improv is really hard. I think I'm more calculating, but I like the look. Let's see. I think that is your background. Okay, yes, you answered that. Foreground and background contrast. Yeah, I mean, I think with this guy, I picked a low volume in the background to contrast the color because I did want this to sort of. Here's the balance, right? I wanted the rosettes to kind of come forward and grab you, but I didn't want it to fly off the quilt either. I wanted to ground it a little bit, so it did seem part of every, it is a school, rectangle. It's a shape, and I didn't want it to like totally floating. I wanted it to be a part of the bigger piece, but be the highlight of the piece. And then that's when I threw the piano border around the outside because I felt like I needed to anchor it again with something to kind of, and I just use all the scraps just to kind of pull it back in because I did feel like it popped off the quilt. So I feel like the piano border again anchors it back, which I think borders are huge as far as how the quilt comes together at the end. So I think borders are important. All right, let's see. Is your background on the piece? Yeah, that's that question. Okay. I think I answered all of that. Tell us something. Okay. Here's a good one. The trick on the needle threader. All right. So I have this little clover needle threader because I am super blind as a bat. And I use the little 11 Milner's tiny. I can't get the thread through this thing to save my life. So I have to use one of these. I have on occasion tried and I have got it like every 1,000 tries. I think I can get one. Has to be really bright and blah, blah, blah. So I have these all over the house. I think I have a dozen of these. I have them in my purse. I have them in my car. They are a little finicky, but I think I have figured it out. Okay, I'm going to try to use this. Now that's going to... We need a contrasting color. Contrast, right? That's the topic of the day. But that's a quilt. A good quilt is contrasting. Well, in my opinion. All right. Okay, so I have cut the thread. And then here is the trick. I've got my needle in. Now, I do know that these clover needle threads, there's certain kind of eyes that they don't like. And it says it on the package. I think it's round that they don't like. I don't know why that would be, but I don't know them. I'm gonna open one of these one time and look at how it does it. It's fascinating. I want to know what it is that's poking through the eye of the needle. Maybe I'll do that on the next live chat. We can open up a needle threader. Okay, so I push it down and that's all good. Here is the trick. You get a quick release. Okay, watch it not do this. I did it. See? Okay, there it is. It's the quick release. Has nothing to do with and I'll do something with that. So it has nothing to do with the pushing down. So again, just slide it in there. I'm gonna do one more. It's fun. I love the needle threader. You're a lifesaver. Okay. It has nothing. Let's see if I can do 2 in a row. I've had great success with this once I figured it out. Again, just pushing down, quick release. Yahtzee! There we go. God, I wish I had stock in these. All right, there's the needle threader thing. Okay, what were my other questions? Anybody else? Anybody else got some questions? God, I've been talking for an hour. I don't know if I'm gonna talk much more because I'm getting old. Talked about the numbers. Oh, do I need the book? Oh, burying thread, speed cutting. Oh God, can I? All right. I think that I've talked enough for today. That's an hour. I would love to do this on a regular basis, and I would love it if you guys would send in your questions and type in your questions and do the chat, because I think this is the best part of quilting, is the connection that we have together. And again, I am searching for the better solution to connect with everybody, even though it's a one-way conversation with you. I feel like it's a little better. So I don't know. I mean, I have dreams of doing this once a week. I don't know if I have that much information to tell you. I don't know. Maybe we can talk about anything, quilt shop, or, latest, anyways, I just want to say thank you for showing up, and thank you for being a part of my first ever live stream. And it'll get better and we'll get more intricate. I actually wanted to do some more demos, but we have to work out a camera thing because it's not close enough, because there's a lot of technique in EPP that I think should be talked about. So today's is kind of that overview, us testing, and I will send out a message on the World Wide Web like I did. I think I emailed, Instagram. I did everything possible but drop notes out of a helicopter today. So thank you very much. This is Karen, the DIY Addict, signing off.